So what is content? So content is your digital storefront. So a lot of people, including me, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur literally like all of you, same exact thing. I have companies that are very much brick and mortar like businesses, and the consulting business is something that we have that's amazing. We work with 60 plus clients right now. But I also at heart am still a regular entrepreneur. I didn't have a content campaign for many years and I had no idea what it even was. And then it just seemed so foreign to what I could ever pull off that we just didn't do it. Now all three of our four companies now have a content campaign, and we're getting ready to add the fourth one probably in the next 6 months. But content is your digital storefront. And what I mean by that is I always wanted to, I run service businesses. I always wish I could have a business that had some kind of storefront. I thought, it'd be nice to have like a Walmart or something where I could actually see employees and I could see customers and I can make people happy. That's why people like restaurants, because you can see people and you can service them. You can see your people and you can motivate them. And most service businesses, they can't do that. So there is no storefront. So like if I'm buying from a GKM or from a Frank I Rounds, I'm maybe buying from a rep, but there's no constant ongoing storefront where you can walk into a store and buy something. That's what content is. So our business in the past year and a half, the consulting business, which a lot of you read our stuff, that is our storefront. It's the best we can do. We can't have a physical building, but we can constantly have a sign up that says we are in business and we have a lot going on. So for us, we invest in that storefront. And I will tell you, it is not, go on the next slide, and I'll go a little more in detail. So content is the umbrella for marketing. So a lot of people think I'm going to do a content campaign and I'm going to start getting leads and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to make all this money. And the reality is it's not true. I can't say we don't get leads off stuff. We do. We get leads off stuff like off webinars. We get stuff, people email us because they've seen our content. But really content is the overall umbrella. So there's different kinds of marketing. There's passive marketing, there's direct marketing. I would put this under the passive type of marketing. But to me, it's table stakes as you're growing your business. Okay, so if you're growing your business, you want to have something that's in the background that's making people realize we're open for business. So then you can go and do the more direct stuff, whether that's directly soliciting customers, whether it's warm calling or LinkedIn marketing or trade shows or however you might get your clients. Content is the umbrella so that you can then play inside that storefront and do all the rest of the more direct stuff that you do. So just understand that. And without that content umbrella, you really don't have anything that says that we're open for business, and you really can't stay top of mind without a content campaign. You can't, which means that you're only as good as the physical or the emailing that you're doing on a regular basis. And we don't think that's enough. So part of our proven process for our clients is we want you to have some kind of campaign in the background that's showing we're open for business, and that's why content is the umbrella. So good content the goal is to build your brand credibility, to nurture prospects and to encourage them to buy. They see you as being legitimate. Like people say to me, it's kind of funny, in the past year and a half, people said to me, "Man, you have a lot going on." Now, we do have a lot going on, so that's somewhat of a true statement. But the perception that people have because of how much content we put out and how much we're out there in the universe, the perception is that we're like, this massively growing company. And we are growing pretty rapidly. Like I said, we're 60 plus clients. We add somewhere between 3 to 6 clients per quarter, but we're not growing as rapidly as people think we are. And that's a lot of it's because they just see us so much that that's what they think. And that's what you're supposed to be doing. So we're establishing our credibility, and then we become a thought leader in the industry. So when you start putting content out with your name on it, you're basically saying, I know what I'm doing. Here's what I am. And I know that there's some people have an aversion to that. Well, I'm not an expert. You get a little imposter syndrome. I'm telling you, the best business people out there, they just lead. They say, we got it. They create content. And that's how you become a thought leader. It's not some mythical thing. You become a thought leader by putting content out there and people say, wow, that person's got it. The best thought leaders that I see, I actually look at them sometimes and I think, I'm not even sure they know what they're doing, but they're so good at self-promotion that that's how they're perceived. And then the last thing is it ensures your digital presence is a good reflection of your work. So our goal, Kristen and I, and she'll talk to you about how we do it a little bit later on in a few minutes here, but our goal every time we do a blog or a post or whatever we're putting together is to really make sure we're reflecting the values of our business, what we believe, and we're always thinking about our clients and what we want our clients to see. So the blog campaigns you see are an actual reflection of the work that we are doing internally, either in our own companies or in our clients' companies. So now let's talk about why you ladies and guys don't do this, because you don't. And I didn't either. So I want to talk about why you guys get stuck. All right, so here's the big problem. Your online presence and your brand reputation don't align with the quality of work that you're delivering. And that's the case for I can't say all of you because I don't know all of your business. I haven't looked at everybody's sites here, but for some of you, I know that's definitely the case. You need an online presence and a brand reputation that aligns with what you're doing, so your customers can see the storefront and say, those guys and those gals are amazing. So for all of you, it's either non-existent. For some of you, it's definitely non-existent. It's inconsistent. You ever get those emails? I'm sure you probably either put them out or you receive them. They're like dramatic. You get them like once every 3 weeks or once every 5 weeks or once a week, and sometimes 3 in a row. You can see an entrepreneur is trying to do their own stuff. There's no consistency, and it doesn't represent you well. So you're going to see, and Kristen's going to go into this, our blog campaigns come out every Thursday morning. You probably wake up every Thursday morning and realize we've sent out a blog campaign. They must go out every single, I think it's by 12:01, was when they go out every single Thursday. You'll notice that the CCG storefront is always open for business, and it always represents who we are. It's consistency. And we never missed it. In fact, we missed it one time in the last year, and it threw me off, and I wasn't happy. And we addressed it immediately. I think we missed it by a day. We're trying to create consistency and a lot of touches. All right, go ahead. Thank you. So why does this disconnect happen? Okay, so I speak for myself, my own perspective as an entrepreneur, and it's been my experience of working with a lot of you. One, you hate to write, or you hate other people write. So you can't find the right voice. So either you're willing to contract it out, but you can't find somebody to write for you, or you just you want to do it yourself, but you can't stand writing. I am petrified of content. Like if you ask me to replicate what Kristen is doing, this is me personally, I would say it ain't gonna happen. I don't like to write. I get stressed out when I start to write. So there's a struggle to execute internally. You've been burned by marketing agencies. We don't even recommend marketing agencies anymore. Almost across the board, we do not. There are certainly some good ones out there. I'm not dissing marketing agencies in any way, but people have been burned by them. You feel confused by marketing in general. You don't understand what it is. You don't understand what the purpose of content really is, and you're afraid of spending on something that you may not have immediate return. So our offering, Kristen's offering, is really, she's really got this thing down to. She created an offering that entrepreneurs can access it dollars wise and then get what they want. But you could do this on your own, and we're going to show you how you can do it on your own if you're not going to hire somebody like Kristen. Personally, we've set it up so that you can hire somebody like Kristen. She has an amazing company, and I do recommend it. But there are ways you can do without it. But either way, if you do it on your own, you're going to have to go through some obstacles. So let's go to the next slide.
Whoa.
The opportunity with content is brand awareness at a fraction of the cost of ad spend. If you want to know how much all this costs us, just email us, and email me, email Kristen. We'll shoot you straight and tell you exactly what we spend. And it's way less than you might think. We've set it up to be so that all of you can afford it. And it's not even a fraction of what you spend on ad spend. And we believe in ad spend too. We're about to do a lot of it, but content is like a minuscule amount of money to get a tremendous amount of recognition. So over time, you do get inbound leads. We have gotten inbound leads from our content, and probably it honestly may have even paid for itself. I don't think that's the best way to look at content, but it probably has actually paid for itself. We've increased our search engine friendliness. We're very conscious of making sure our articles are written in a way to do that. We have brand recognition that increases the pride of our team. And that's a really big thing. Your team's going to feel more proud because they see themselves in what you're putting out. You get your vision to a huge audience. We have followers all over the world, which is fun to see. And you can take your voice, the voice of Frank I. Rounds, and it goes from one person to now many people on a constant and regular basis. And the better it is, and good content is the goal, the more people look at it and say, oh, I want to read that. So it's all about how great it is. And then the more your audience will keep growing and growing and growing, and your storefront will keep getting bigger without you having to spend the rent on creating an actual storefront. So for me, it's been a big obstacle. I wish I had started doing it before I was in my late 40s and I was older. But hindsight's 2020. I'm glad for the last few years we have focused on it, and it's become a very big part of our company, as you can see. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen and let her talk about how she actually goes through and actually does it.
All right. Hi, everybody. So we're going to transition now. Eric, I really appreciate all of the setup and for it's a good compliment to what's about to get a little bit more technical. So we're really going to go through in the next few parts of the presentation a lot of the process and a real how-to. I just want to start by saying that you're going to get a copy of this slide deck. You can have access to the recording if you want, and then some of the tools that I show throughout, all of that's going to be sent your way. So don't feel like if you don't capture every detail of what we're going to go through that it's all lost to you. I think prefer that you kind of find a couple high-level takeaways and then maybe write down a few questions that we can address at the end. So the first thing I want to talk through is 4 simple steps for content development. And I'm just going to set you up here that you're going to see a little bit of a switch in branding for the next few slides. This is the proven process for my company, Kristen Sweeney Consulting. So just be ready for that as it comes forward. So this is for folks who, feel like I don't even know where to begin with creating content. They see emails in their inbox, they see blog posts up on other people's websites, and they're basically like, how does that happen? It seems like magic. So truly, it isn't magic. It is 4 easy steps that we've broken it down into. Clarify, capture, create, and complete. Really important one. A lot of people identify like writing or content development with just only like the creative aspect of marketing. And I think they kind of de-emphasize or forget about the execution. And honestly, execution is just a huge piece of what we're going to talk about today. So now we'll go through each of these steps and just break them down a little bit. So step 1 is clarify. Clarify is really all about discovery. The purpose of clarifying is to document your brand's identity, making sure you understand who you are, making sure you understand who your audience is. That's extremely important when you're developing content campaigns, and then laying out the exact aims of your content campaign. So the tool that we use for this is a marketing questionnaire, and this is one of the tools that I will send out to everybody. It'll be a template that you can just make a copy of. I'm not going to run you through it right now, but essentially just to show you, it's a couple of pages long, and it's got everything from your elevator pitch to tell me about your ideal client to what does your company value, what are the words your customers use to describe you, what brands do you identify with, what brands don't you identify with. So again, just a quick glance at this. I will give this to you to take a look at. But what I want to point out is that the marketing questionnaire, what you'll see when you take a deeper dive into it, it is not a huge, extensive deep dive into your avatar. And that kind of has to do with this little asterisk right down here. So the way I think of content is content cannot build your brand for you. So occasionally I will talk to folks, and probably most folks here on this webinar are not in this category because you have established businesses, but occasionally I'll talk to somebody who's not as far along in their journey. And what I find is they're sort of looking for something to help them figure out who they are. If you're at that stage, I actually don't recommend investing in content quite yet, because you need to take the time to understand what you're selling, what your offerings are, who your audience is, and then content really comes in to say, okay, now that we know that, let's document it. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. And now we're going to go create content that's going to really speak to those people. Which takes us into step 2, which is capture. So that clarify stage really just happens once at the beginning of the process. It's that kind of completing that marketing questionnaire and just making sure whoever's going to be involved in content development is aligned and on the same page with who you are, who you're talking to, and then we get into what you want to start talking about. And that's step 2, which is capture. So in this phase, you are gathering raw material for your content. And I want to emphasize the words raw material, because very often when folks think about the end product, a blog or an email or even a social media post, they sort of jump right to, I'm going to write the thing. This stage is super important because it makes sure that you're not reinventing the wheel, which is also one of CCG's guiding principles for their growth system. And we are just extremely well aligned on that. So if you already have information, if you have previous articles or webinars you've done or presentations, even this kind of surprising pieces of content like proposals for clients, internal processes that you use to deliver service, videos you've created, all of that stuff is part of this kind of big data dump where we want to capture everything that's available so that when we get to our content interviewing, which I'll talk about in a minute, we're not just asking you something we could already read about that's already been created. The other way that we gather raw material for content is that we leverage the knowledge of the people in the business. And I'll talk about this a bit more in the second part here. So I'm going to be a little hand wavy about it now. So let's just placeholder that as content interviewing to unlock the ideas inside executives' heads. In very many cases, that's the CEO, although not always. So the key for step 2 is really that you're capturing raw information and you're not trying to jump ahead and focus on what goes with what or which piece am I writing. You're just kind of pulling everything together before you start to synthesize it. Once you've got your material captured and gathered together and it's all in a folder or in a document, this is sort of, you do this as a kind of big content audit. And then you also do a miniature version of this every time you want to create a piece. That's when you actually go to create. So create is the step that most people think about when they think about content. It's like writing your blog post, writing your email copy, creating your social media content. So the requirements for how your content actually gets developed during the create phase are, you need somebody who can write. I will note this does not have to be the contributor. So certainly when we're writing content for clients inside my company, the contributors, most often the CEO, and then we are the ones doing the writing. But even if you're executing this inside your own organization, completely internal, and let's say you're the CEO and you are contributing the ideas, you still don't need to be the person who's doing the writing. And in most cases, I'd probably recommend that you aren't. But you do need somebody who's got some writing skills. They need to be able to take your ideas and shape them to deliver your message. And the create phase includes editing and feedback. So basically, if you think about the previous phase, capture, as the data dump, this phase create starts with writing that first draft, and it goes all the way through editing, polishing, basically till the content is finalized and ready to get out into the world. And that's where we enter stage 4. Oh, nope, we don't, not quite yet. So 3 questions. I'll come back to these when we talk about the content development a little bit more. But 3 questions as you're creating your draft. And again, I'm intentionally being a little bit, I don't want to overwhelm us with information. And this isn't a writing workshop. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time breaking down exactly how to create a blog post. I want to take you more through the process of developing content overall. But 3 really simple, straightforward questions to ask yourself when you're evaluating a piece of content. And if you have good answers to these, you really can't go wrong. So is the content client focused? A lot of times what we see happen is when companies create content, they unintentionally create it for their colleagues, for other people in their industry, instead of for their audience. So it's too technical, it's too jargony, it's too insidery. It tells their colleagues and their competitors how to do their job better instead of really reaching out to their audience. So is it client focused is a great criteria for evaluating a piece of content before you get ready to deploy it. Question 2, is it clear? And so what that means is this really has to do with the mechanics of the writing, right? Do the ideas flow? Is it well sequenced? Is it well structured? And then is it clean? Is it proofread? Which I can see that my question number 2 here isn't, so I'm feeling really good about that. Because life. Is it clean, right? So is it proofread? Is it free of mistakes? And is it formatted? You know, if it's a blog post, formatted, ready to go onto the website so that it can be SEO friendly and things like that. And then finally, step 4, complete. So this, as I alluded to, I think is the most overlooked and sort of under discussed piece of content development, which is actually getting your content out into the world. It's sort of assumed, it's sort of, it's kind of an afterthought, let's say. And in reality, deployment takes quite a bit of work. It does require some technical skills. They're not that hard to acquire. But it is really important that your content, you know, goes through that finalization process, gets approved and published on time, so that you can maintain that regular posting cadence in accordance with your calendar you've set up. And we'll take a look at a calendar of how to actually track your content deployment in a little bit here. And then, as I mentioned, there are some technical skills required. So you cannot go in cold and learn to use an email marketing platform like a MailChimp or a HubSpot, or deploy a blog on the back end of a WordPress website or even a Squarespace website. But they are absolutely learnable skills. So, if this is something you're doing internally, and it is a matter of making sure there's a team member who either has those skills or can get some basic training for them. But it's certainly not impossible to conquer or learn those skills. So again, just a quick review of the 4 C's of content development. Step 1 is to clarify, and that's where we use that marketing questionnaire to understand who you are, who your audience is, and what the aims are for your content campaign. Step 2 is to capture, which is where we're just gathering all the raw material, whether that's from like pre-existing content that's been created in one form or another, or from content interviewing, which we'll talk about shortly. Step 3 is to create. So this is writing the thing, right? Building the thing, taking it through editing. And then step 4 is to complete, which is how you deploy your content and make sure it's actually published on a regular cadence. Sound overwhelming? So I want you to know that it doesn't have to be, especially if you are the CEO or the person who's going to be contributing some of the ideas. So our clients, and when I say clients, I usually mean the business owner, they're able to get consistent content campaigns by investing about 2 hours per month. So we typically have a 1-hour interview with them every month, and then they probably spend up to an hour reviewing, making edits, providing feedback, and approving the content that we send out. And with that 2-hour investment, they can get content that's going out every single week, maybe every other week, on their blog, in their email, and even on their social media. So it doesn't have to be hard. And we're going to talk about how we achieve that, how you can get great content without writing a word. I'd rather stick forks in my eyes than have to write a blog post. This is an actual quote from an actual client that we work with. And he may have said literally stick forks in my eyes. He was very serious and very intense when he shared this information. So, he knew the value of content. He'd been tasked with creating a blog on a monthly basis, and he just hated every step of the process. Right? They were always running behind because he would procrastinate and drag his feet, and then he wasn't happy with it. So, the people who were trying to get on his team, who were trying to deploy the content, were always bugging him, and then they were running late and it was delayed a week. And this is not an uncommon situation, right? So if this is you, know that you can free yourself of the need to ever write a blog post ever again. The solution is to leverage your knowledge and your expertise, but separate that from actually writing the post yourself. There is a better way to unlock the ideas in your head, and that way is content interviewing. So the reason content interviewing is so effective, especially for entrepreneurs who I think in many cases their personality is just really well adapted for this style, is that speaking is an easier way to get your ideas out. You feel less pressure to be perfect. You feel the need to be less sort of organized and concise, and all those rules about good writing that you have in your head sort of fly out the window, and you're focused instead on communicating the ideas, which is really what matters. The other piece is that it really helps capture your voice, right? So voice has like a lot of meanings and it can feel sort of ambiguous, but I like to really connect the voice as is written to the voice, right? Like, how would you say something as the business owner? And, you know, my relationship with Eric and with Cruise Consulting Group really, I think, is a very clear example of that. So there are very few clients for which I would write a post and write, "You're awesome" in it. But when I write that for Eric, I hear him saying that. I have heard him say that. And so I know he's laughing, right? Because I know exactly the inflection, like I just hear it. And so in that context, it feels really natural because it is an extension of his personality and his literal physical voice being translated into the written word. And the best way to capture that is by letting you as the entrepreneur speak, because all too often your speaking voice and the kind of charisma and characteristics that make you a dynamic person sort of all fall really flat when we actually start to put pen to paper or fingers to keys, as the case may be. So, like, quick and dirty, how to conduct a content interview. A lot of this will seem really intuitive, so don't be intimidated by the fact that there are 6 steps. Step number 1, set up a Zoom call and make sure you record it. Step 2, assign an interviewer to join you. And we'll talk a little bit about the role of that person. Determine the overall topic. So we're going to write a blog post. Okay, what's the blog about? Like, what's the big takeaway? What is the kind of headline of the piece? What are we talking about here? Shape the piece with Q&A. So your interviewer will actually help you by prompting you and asking you questions. And then you, as the content contributor, just get to talk. You get to share your knowledge. You get to share your opinions. You get to share your expertise. Get the call transcribed and have the interviewer take notes. None of this is anything you need to do. So again, if you're the business owner or an executive who's the kind of the mind behind the post, all you're doing is getting on a call and talking. And then get that video recording and notes to the best writer on your team and have them create a blog post out of it. So this is another tool that I'm going to share, and we'll have a few additional content prompts on here as well when you receive it, but I wanted to just keep it to a minimum for now. So here are the kinds of questions that your interviewer can ask you. What's the big takeaway of this piece? So by the time somebody's done reading a piece of content, what is it you would like them to know? What is it you would like them to understand or feel, right? Sometimes we want to tap into emotion. What is it you would like them to do? So that's going to help to clarify what is the call to action of this piece? What is the next step here? Is it filling out a form? Is it contacting us? Is it signing up for a webinar? You know, tell me more about that, right? So you'll be surprised. A lot of these content prompts are quite similar to almost like a coaching vibe, right? So if you have a team member who's got some management training, you might be surprised how easily they'll be able to kind of step into this. Tell me more about that topic. Tell me more about why your customers struggle with this. Tell me more about their problem. Why do clients struggle with this? What's really the challenge? Let's break it down, right? And you can see, we kind of did that at the beginning of this webinar, right? We kind of broke down, like, where do companies get stuck? So it's laying out the problem before you deliver the solution. It's very meta right now. What is their solution? And then tell me more about that. So just that continual prompting to get into more and more detail to make sure you've got enough content to really flesh out a blog post that's, 500, 1,000 words. If you're the content contributor, here's what I want you to really let go of: dictating the piece while you talk. So sometimes when people first start interviewing, they think that they're that it's almost like a lawyer or a physician, right? Who would be like literally dictating the words. That's not the purpose of the content interview. If you were doing that, you may as well just write it. So you're not teeing up the exact sentences. You're simply providing the information and the messaging and the language that will then be used to create the post. So in that same note, you can let go of needing to go in order. You want to have somebody on your team who's able to sequence the information appropriately. So I'm not suggesting here that you simply take a transcript, clean it up, and turn it into a blog post. I do believe in writing that's a bit more sophisticated than that. So you, as the content contributor, you can jump all over the place a little bit, and that's okay, because sometimes that's how the ideas connect and flow together. And then let go of editing yourself during the conversation. So I can't tell you how many conversations we have with clients where they kind of say, like, I'm not sure if this is appropriate for the customer, but here's this thing about the way our business works, and that's really the motivation that's driving X, Y, and Z. Now, they are right that a lot of times that thing they're talking about doesn't make its way into the text of the post in the final version. But understanding that background and having the context allows us to then like really shape the narrative and shape the piece to say, oh, I get it. So we want to highlight this piece of that. Or maybe we do want to actually talk a little bit about your internal process, but make sure that we tie it back to how the customer benefits from the way you do things. All right, so let's talk now about getting your content into the world. So you've got your 4 C's, right? You've gone through your marketing questionnaire to clarify who you are and the aims of your content campaign and who you're talking to. You have captured content by kind of doing a giant data dump of everything you've got, and you've done some content interviewing on a specific blog post. And you've used an interviewer to help you with content prompts. And you've even created the content. You've gone through the drafting phase. It's been edited. You're ready to like put it out there, right? Again, I think one of the most overlooked and underappreciated pieces of marketing and content development is actually putting this stuff out there. So here's how to keep your content consistent. Eric talked about it before, right? But one of the really important things that content can do for you is to be a great representation of your brand. So we work with a lot of clients who are doing amazing work. And to be honest, I kind of assume that like you're awesome operationally, that your clients are happy and that they're really, really satisfied with you. And so my goal with content is to make sure that everything else you're putting out there is just as good as what you're delivering to your clients. So consistency is part of that, right? We did a great job at first, but then we got busy and our marketing fell off. Has this been you? Have you been in this position? Have you been really inspired and like gone full bore on a social media platform or gotten really excited about email marketing? And then, a couple months later, just crickets. Right. And so you kind of have these ups and downs. And I just got something the other day from someone who, it was an email and was basically like, I've been away for a really long time, which I hadn't noticed, to be honest, but then it's back. And so it's that like that struggle kind of becomes visible. So marketing for many, many companies is the most important thing you never get around to. The most important thing you can never seem to make time for. Some of that is challenges with execution. So these are big projects in a lot of cases, or that and like getting to actually cross the finish line and then doing that every week or twice a month can be tough. Playing the long game. So as Eric talked about, understanding that brand building takes time, that establishing your credibility takes time, and that if you don't see a flood of leads after 2 emails, that doesn't mean you're not on the right track or not making the right investment. The 6-month question. So this is something I think is extremely valuable to ask yourself when you're thinking about marketing. And it actually came from a conversation Eric and I had, so we'll be really transparent for a minute. We were talking about getting a new website built, and we were debating the investment, and with everything else we had going on, was this the right time to start working on a new website for the company? And we kind of went back and forth and pros and cons and this and that. And what I finally said to Eric that helped us make our decision was, this is a big project and it's probably going to take 6 months. So 6 months from now, what will you wish you had in terms of a website? What will you wish you had in terms of marketing? Where do you want to be in terms of your credibility or your reputation or the way that you've been putting yourself out there? And if 6 months from now, you don't want it to look like today, right, then today is the day to get started. So if you said tomorrow yesterday and you're still struggling, I want to show you, right, how to plan and keep your marketing consistent. The solution really is to double down on execution. So I think of marketing as creativity, yes, plus the ability to get shit done. Because if it doesn't get done, it doesn't matter. You need planning, process, and ownership in order to get there. So we're going to talk about those 3 pieces a little bit. Planning is like, what are we doing? What's the plan here? So there are a lot more decisions that go into this than you might think. So what channels are we actually using? Are we sending out emails on an email marketing platform? Okay. Are we posting blogs on our website? Great. Are we doing the socials? Great. Which platform? Which platforms, right? Where are we showing up on TikTok? Are we showing up on LinkedIn? What are we doing here? How much content do we need and how often? So might be, we want 2 social media posts per week. We want 2 blog posts per month. We want 2 emails per month. More is not always better. There are a couple of different reasons for this. I think the most important one is I would rather you start with what you can maintain. Right? Start with what you can maintain, and then layer on, add in, build up once you've sort of built that muscle. It is not that different from like building the habit of going to the gym, right? So if you start by trying to go to the gym twice a day or even every single day without a break, there's a good chance you're not gonna follow through over a long period of time. But if you start by going twice a week and then build up to 3 times a week and then 4 times a week, you're a lot more likely to keep it consistent. There are, again, some other technical reasons why more is not always better. If you go from like 0 to 60 on your social media, you can crush your engagement and get your posts deprioritized. If you go nuts with your email list, you could get a ton of unsubscribes and get flagged, or really just see like your open rates tank. So there's some other reasons too for kind of building incrementally. But the main point is to just keep things dead simple at first. Process is like, how will this get done? So whatever your plan is, make sure it's documented and that you've thought through every single step. So even in that content interview process, make sure you know who sets up the interviews, who writes, who edits, who approves, who deploys. Yes, those could all be the same person. That would be very convenient, right? But they may not be. And then make sure that you leave enough time realistically for every step of the process, like plus a little breathing room. Especially if you are, if you know yourself, right, as the entrepreneur, and you know that you are likely to be a bottleneck, I encourage you to build in a little bit of padding for yourself and then get really committed to not being the bottleneck. Ownership is the last piece. So who makes sure all of this gets done? We've got a lot of assignments. It's looking really great. We have a plan. It's documented. You want to assign this plan, and you can use this calendar I'm going to show you here in a minute as a tracker. Assign it to either your marketing person or the most fastidious person on your team, because project management and the ability to keep this program on track is crucial. You want to make sure that from a practical perspective, you've really given this person the authority to follow up and get answers. So if this person needs to talk to a bunch of senior executives and they're not giving your marketing coordinator the time of day, there's an issue there that needs to be resolved, right? They need to be empowered to get information. It needs to be really clear to your entire team that their participation and their input is crucial. And that really, especially if you're the CEO, can start with you, right? By kind of living the example and making sure you're not the bottleneck. Again, it could be as little as 2 hours a month of your time to set up a really consistent content campaign if you hand over everything else to somebody else. So don't be the bottleneck. I want to show you this editorial calendar, and we can take a couple minutes on this. So this is a version of the calendar that we use with all of our clients, and I've included just a few sample posts. So it is a shared Google spreadsheet. We've got tabs way down at the bottom here. So this is for newsletters and blog posts. We've got a tab for social media. And then everything's got a date by it, right? So the date of deployment, the date it should go out. Each of these posts is its own Google document where the clients can then, provide feedback. And what else do we have going on here? So we've got the dates for deployment here. We've got some checkboxes, right? So in this case, there are 2 people that need to give their approval for pieces of content. We've got the client and we've got a partner who also reviews the content. So this checkbox lets us know that things are ready to go. Approval requested by, this is a really critical column, right? So this might say like 7:15. So that somebody knows when is their approval due? When do they need to provide their feedback and review to help keep things on track? And then a color coding system here. So this lets anybody who's coming into this calendar know, right? So I'm not the one who deploys content in our company anymore in 99% of cases. So this allows me to come in and be like, okay, we're all set, we're on track. Everything has been scheduled for publishing through mid-August. And so it's a really quick visual reference for me to know that things are where they need to be and that we're not falling behind. We also have other systems for tracking. We use a project management software, but this editorial calendar, and again, you're gonna have access to this. You're gonna be able to make your own copy of it, and you can use this exact document to capture your information and to help track things and keep them moving along. Going back here. All right. So I know that was a ton of information. We're going to do really high level but quick recap of what we just covered. So the 4 C's of content development were the first things we talked about. That was those 4 steps we looked at. The 4 steps are clarify, capture, create, and complete. And we talked about how to get great content without writing a word. There are more details than this, but the basic answer is interview instead. So don't write, but speak. And then to keep your content marketing consistent, you want to double down on execution and think about it in terms of planning, process, and ownership. Right. So again, this was not a deep dive writing workshop. We didn't get into how to structure a blog post, but these are the basic tools that you need to actually launch and maintain a content marketing campaign. So the tools that you're going to get after this webinar are a copy of this slide deck as a PDF, the marketing questionnaire that you can make a copy of and use for your own company, a list of content prompts for interviewing. We'll also have some ideas about where to get your content topics from. And then that editorial calendar template. And again, you'll be able to make your own copy and then just use that exact doc if you want to, in order to track approvals and delivery of your content. Now, if you've gone through all of that and you're like, sounds great, I never want to do that myself. Understandable, right? You're not the only one who feels that way. So if you want to explore the idea of done for you content instead, basically you could hand off every single piece of that process, except for the content interviewing that you would participate in, to me and my team. So we specialize in working with service-based businesses in even the most complex industries. We work with everyone from business consulting to 3D printing. And we deliver high-value content, a simple, hassle-free process, and full project management, or as much project management as you need. And we can also coordinate with teams internally on some of the deployment handoffs if you have those resources available. So certainly we can talk about that later on if you're interested. There'll be a follow-up email with all of these resources. But for now, that is the end of the presentation. So I want to just take it to any questions that you might have, and I'm happy to spend the rest of our time, or as much time as we need, answering them.
Anybody in the group have any questions for Kristen?
Can you go into a little bit of the funnel for Eric's commercial painting?
Yeah.
We've seen, just because I've seen all of your stuff for Entrepreneur and I understand how that works, but we're more related to your commercial painting than we are to Cruise Consulting Group. So
yes. So Justin, we've done a few email campaigns for CE Painting. Can you tell me just a little bit more about your audience for GCAM? Because I bet I have a better analogy for you, even than that, of like a...
So our target market right now is private K through 12 schools and private colleges in the country, in the US. Our target audience for private K through 12 is the principal of the school. For the college, it's the CFO or director of business development. Sometimes it's the head of school.
Okay, got it, got it. So what I would say is that in some cases, in some of those B2B cases, the main thing that we want to think about most often is usually frequency, right? So I work with a sheet metal fabricator whose audience is engineers. We send an audience, we send them an email every single week. And honestly, they're like gangbusters. So there's really not an industry to which this doesn't apply. But what you want to sometimes think about is, does your audience need to hear from you every single week? Maybe you would want to be more on a monthly cadence with them, or in some cases, a quarterly cadence is like the lowest I would ever really go. Otherwise, I don't really think of it as an ongoing campaign. It's just kind of...
How do you take the cadence slider based on how much attention they have, availability? So I'm saying like a CEO or the higher level person has less time, less frequency, or how are you thinking about the frequency?
It kind of depends. I would need to know a little bit more about the industry, but I think about a lot of different things. So as an example, within the consulting company, the most common feedback that I get from Eric is make it shorter. It's a CEO, make it shorter. In other cases, the frequency can be like, what's the quality of your list? So who are we already talking to? It can be based on the kinds of content topics that we pull out, right? So if there's a lot of kind of news and updates happening in your industry, if there's a lot going on, then there's probably opportunity for a higher frequency. And if you're an attorney who says, you know, I've had a client like this, it's like, nothing happens in our, like, there's not a lot of updates in our space, then, you know, you might not feel like there's as much content to share on a regular basis. So a whole bunch of different considerations go into that, but those are the kinds of things I would usually want to learn more about and think about to kind of understand how often we want to be, you know, touching people to optimize getting in front of them, but not sort of feeling like you're there with something that doesn't really add value.
Gotcha.
And the quick answer to your question, Justin, is we run more of a link. We run content more on LinkedIn in that company, more publishing what we're doing, publishing, tricks of the trade type of stuff. Every industry is different. So ideally, all this is designed to show that you're in the marketplace, to create credibility, and to eventually get you business. So in the commercial painting business, we are the lowest of the low on the food chain. Okay, so we are the bottom of the barrel. We're bidding on projects where we're one of 30 bidders. Now, we usually sell based on relationships. So education in that space and content is less of a factor in making decisions. So we focus more on awareness and making sure the storefront stays open through LinkedIn, because painting in particular is not a trade most people care about. So there's not a lot for us to actually do, but Kristen does a lot of making sure we're staying in place in social, but it's a very weird it's a weird industry in that way.
Since you're selling in relationships and it's similar in college, is your director of business development requesting that person on LinkedIn after the relationship has started and then dripping that in? Or did you guys request everybody in Massachusetts that you could do business with?
In the commercial business?
Correct.
Ask that question again.
So you're saying you're mostly marketing on LinkedIn based on relationships, but they can only find you if they're friends with you on LinkedIn or they follow your page.
Yeah.
Is your person friend requesting them right when they create the relationship, or are they friend requesting them before the relationship's even built?
Starts with Joanne, right?
Yeah. So now you're going into a marketing question, which Kristen could also spend time talking to you about on a different day, or if you just reached out to her and she can give you some insights into that. But I will tell you, within the limits of being annoying, we are aggressively always trying to add anybody to our LinkedIn network that we possibly can at all times, proactively at all times. So, we have people that are consistently trying to add people, every single person in target market, every single one. Because list building is another thing we didn't go over in big time today, but you got to be building your lists. The list building is a huge function that we're still not nailed down 100% on in our companies, but we are nailed down how valuable it is. And there's lead magnets, there's things you can focus on that are cool, you can build, that Kristen can also help you with, that are not really part of this particular thing. But the answer to your question is we're trying to build an audience through constantly outreaching whoever's in our target audience. We have a biz dev person who does it directly themselves. And then we saturate them with LinkedIn content. So Kristen said it very early in the presentation. We look at everything we do as being a servant of our clients. So we think, what can we offer in the universe, no matter what we're doing, that they're going to care about in terms of information? Like, what do they want to hear? And in the painting world, because it's so low on the food chain, and it's such a basic function, there's really no audience that wants to hear about it on a regular basis. Now, maybe over time we'll change our mind on that, but it's very few trades. And we have a finance company. We're getting ready to start a massive content campaign on that business as well. We should have one in the collegiate company, but honestly, I just sold it. But otherwise, I think they are doing LinkedIn stuff. But we should have one there because there's a lot that the college kids could want to know about business. So if the bottom line is, if you're in a business where you have a lot you want to be educating your customers on, even if it has nothing to do with them just buying from you, you should have a content campaign. The painting business is one of those weird businesses that doesn't necessarily fall into that category. But of the 4 companies that we own, that's one of the only 4 that doesn't. So we just go heavy on LinkedIn, and we have a pretty heavy presence on LinkedIn in that company.
I'll ping Kristen, and thank you for the clarity on this.
Yeah, and we have done some actually just kind of one-off direct outreach campaigns for the painting company that have had some success. We did one very recently. But Justin, you're pointing out something that I think is valuable, which is for many of our clients, like service-based businesses, although like everything I ever do pretty much ends up on the internet, I'm a really firm believer that for many companies, it's still closely tied in with business development that is not, right? Like most of these companies, most of your teams here, they're not online businesses. We're not trying to take someone through a funnel to a $47 product and then upsell them into a $597 course, right? Like that's great. And there are lots of tricks you can learn from that style, but very often content is the thing that happens when you meet someone at a networking event and then they Google you later, and like, what are they going to find, right? Are they going to find like a website that you're like, oh, don't look at that? Or are they going to find, you know, a bunch of different things, a bunch of really interesting blog posts? Content is the thing that they start receiving in their email once you've had a meeting with them, because you've got a system for adding them to your list. And so now, you know, instead of being that person you met 3 weeks ago that they already forgot about, you're just showing up with something that means something to them every month, every couple of weeks, and offering some value. So it really, I think sometimes it can feel like, you know, you've got to go like all online or all business development. And I really think it's important. Many companies operate optimally when there's a marriage between the two.
No, I fully grasp what you're saying and fully agree.
Remember also that in the if we didn't have so much going on, we are getting ready to actually start direct to customer campaigns in that world. We work with a lot of GCs, but now we're starting to work a lot more with schools and other organizations like that. So we're working on campaigns for that right now. But you could do stuff. It's all about creating content for your audience. So if I had a lot of spare free time these days, which I don't, and we didn't have a very finite sales plan in that company, and that company sales is not our biggest issue right now, I could build a GC content campaign, you know, and it would probably be heavily read because GCs check email like everybody else, but we just haven't done it as a focus. But we could do it, and a GC weekly content that was targeted to what they cared hearing about, even if it's coming from a painting company, it would get a lot of opens. We just haven't done that. So it's all about it's always need satisfaction. We have a blog coming up at some point about that too. Every single thing you're trying to in selling is about focusing on what do our clients want to hear. And it's not even necessarily about us, it's about them, because then they associate us with helping them to get wherever they're trying to go. And eventually they may buy from us. Even if they don't buy from us, we figure that we at least help them. That's how we look at it. So we try and take ourselves and what may come out of this for dollars completely out of all of our equations. And we're looking at our analytics. It's important that it is returning an ROI, but we don't present, we start the content and how can we make sure our audience is really getting tremendous service from reading what we're putting out there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Questions?
I have one. So as I mentioned earlier, we are a technology consulting and software dev firm. I'm usually conflicted between the idea of producing more content or there is 1 billion article content around the world already among 7 billion people who live in this world. I mean, with the amount of content we already have, do we need more content? I mean, so what, like, obviously the way you are presenting it, at least, you know, that the need for the content is, what I understand, is not about helping you generate the traffic or leads. It's more about creating the awareness. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Correct.
But there has to be a, you know, better way to use this time and investment into getting maximum ROI. Like one thought that we started doing was focusing more on ABM, you know, like writing personalized content for your very, you know, specific list of people that you want to work with. I mean, I'm just looking for some experience, Jerry, if you guys have worked with other technology firm or software firm, IT consulting firms, and what have you, you know, learned or assessed in that domain? Because we are mostly dealing with other B2B, other, you know, company, other business owners who don't have time to read the content, right? They don't need one more content from just another software company, right? So how can we leverage the marketing to help us, you know, generate lead or create awareness?
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point and something we didn't get into a ton in this presentation. So one of the things you alluded to is that the intention isn't traffic. And my answer to that is kind of like yes and no. So certainly SEO optimization for, let's say, blog content is a strategy. And if you are a company where bringing cold traffic, you know, search traffic from people just putting something in Google to your website is a first step that can put them on a path to becoming a client, then there's a lot of value in that. It's not that we don't do SEO in my company. So we will use keywords and optimize, but we are not an SEO company, if that makes sense. It's not our primary goal. Where we differ and where I think about it a little bit differently is, I think you're right. They don't need that same article that everybody else is writing. And that's where contributing your contributions become really valuable. So that's where your ideas in your voice really start to differentiate. So that's one piece of it, is that we focus on that extremely high value content that isn't just go research that topic and then write the same article everyone else is writing and try and get some share of that traffic. But like, what do you have to say? If we can put in some keywords, we definitely will. But that's not our primary focus. Our primary focus is more in that thought leadership and ideas that help your business become more memorable. The other thing I would say about that is, you know, I think, especially when you think about email marketing, so if you've got a list, there might be an assumption there that the people on your list are getting information from 10 other technology companies, but that may not be the case, right? So if what you have to share really is targeted toward them, then you might be surprised that they will read it. You know, it's and you know, you can have data that tells you, you can look at your open rates to tell you that. One of the strategies we use with Cruise Consulting Group for that reason is we've opted not to click through for most content. So rather than driving back to the website by, here's the teaser of the blog, go read it, we keep it short and we put the whole thing in the body of the email, because we understand this audience. We're sending it at 6:30 on a Thursday morning. So that's not a time when an entrepreneur is going to really go and then fill out a contact form, right? That's not really our purpose for the campaign. And we understand that. So what we want them to do is open the damn email and read the content that's inside, even if they're skimming it. We've got a skimmer's recap for them at the bottom, rather than trying to drive them to the website, because it's a different strategy. So there are a lot of factors that go into how you could think about that. But I would push back just a little bit on the idea that you don't have anything to say that might be valuable to your audience or different, because there's a good chance that you probably do.
There's also, Varun, a good chance that your people will listen to you because they know it's you. So while they may not read it from anybody else, they'll read it because they know it's from your company. So a lot of us, so I got very lucky in my business journey, because I got to work with 2 or 3, at least 2 are top of my mind right now, companies that I do a lot of business with that are extremely good at content. And I read almost all of it from both companies. I learned, I watched them over years and years, how are they so good? And I learned they're so good because they create a structure. Every week I get the same thing at the same time in the same basic format, and there's always a few tips, and it's always pertinent. And I only read it because it's constant. I don't have to search it. I get it every week in my email, and I know when I'm going to get it. I subscribe to actually 4 things that I read on a weekly basis. And it's not because they're better than anybody else. It's just because I trust the source and because they're so consistent. Bob Glazer, the Friday Forward, which probably many of you subscribe to. Bob's stuff's well written. You know, he's a client of ours, but it's well written stuff, but it's every Friday at a certain time. It's very structured. David Hauser, another friend of mine, longtime entrepreneur, same thing, every week, a couple sentences, sends it out. I read it. He's thousands and thousands of subscribers. I subscribe to my coach's thing. He's got 400 clients, same thing. So it's basically, you're trying to create a community storefront that people, they may see the same stuff they've seen someplace else, but they're getting it from you, and they see it over and over again. And then you start to, and we didn't cover today stuff like list building, lead magnets, things you need to do, because basically you want that list to grow, and then your audience just keeps growing and growing. Are you trying to get create a strategy where your new content is making people say, wow, that's amazing? Yes and no. Your bigger goal is that your business becomes a massive presence in the world, because the people that are listening to you just keep growing, because you're just always there. So, and then, you know, that's the strategy. And that's the companies that I've been lucky enough to do business with. Some of these companies and I've watched them slowly grow and do it. It's like I love things that are like green beans. It's every week, it's consistent. It's you got to eat your green beans. It's not a lot of fun. It's not sexy, but the consistency is amazing. So that's kind of our philosophy. But we do link it to lead magnets, to list growth, to SEO, to optimization. It is really important. But to us, I think if you start leading with that intention, you become everybody else on the planet, and that's when you get sucked in.
Thank you. I have one more question, but if somebody else has, I mean, I would like others to give a chance before I ask one more.
Other questions? Mark says thank you, by the way, Kristen. All right, go ahead, Varun.
So this is, I think, specifically for us. We offer multiple services. We have multiple target audiences, which is where we get confused about how to organize the strategy around writing content. Would your recommendation be, so for example, I mean, I'm going very, specific about our current problem. Like we offer, like we have like three different audiences. We work with digital agencies, we work enterprise clients, we work with startups. So there are three different audiences, have three different needs. When you're thinking about writing content for your brand, which caters to three or multiple different audiences types, how do you plan to write content for everybody separately? Or how do you organize the content when the audiences? I guess that's what I'm asking. I mean,
Yeah,
provided,
sure.
I mean, the previous advices that I have heard in the past is like, you need to be specialized. You need to focus on one audience. Don't go after everybody. That is one advice I have heard multiple times. But if that was not an option, then what? If you would have any other suggestions or ideas, I would like to hear.
Sure thing. So, I mean, the first thing I want to say is, as I kind of mentioned before, like I view content as coming in after you've decided what your business is going to do, right? So, in terms of whether you need to niche down further or things like that, I think content is there to support your decision for the most part. There are a couple of kind of things at play here. One thing is that you might look at those different segments and you might say, well, as a matter of fact, we only think one of them is going to we're really actively pursuing this segment right now. Or these are the folks who are the most likely to make referrals. Or, you might determine that one segment really emerges as the focus for your content campaign. So that's one thing you could do. And you could say, for right now, we're keeping it simple. We're focusing on this audience and everybody else later. That's one thing you could do. Another thing you could do is you could look for the common threads that are available to everyone, the things that maybe are sort of universal to your different audience segments, and you could focus on content that speaks to all of them, and deliver your content that way. You could also do something like, we have one client where they're in government affairs, and so they have it's kind of like their audience is like very much based on the legislative cycle. Like, do these laws matter to you? Well, then you could be our client. And so they're not, based on any specific industry. And so what we'll do is we'll tie in, you could, let's say, write 3 blog posts in a month and then have one for each of those audiences, and then have one newsletter that goes out with each of those 3 pieces kind of targeting, so they can kind of self-identify and choose the content that's most applicable to them. So I think you've got the right idea in that you certainly don't want to deliver the wrong content to the wrong audience segment. But you'll notice what I didn't necessarily suggest is, just start 3 content campaigns all at once, because that's really, really hard to get up and running consistently. So I would recommend starting with something scaled back in one of those ways, just as, again, a few off the cuff ideas, something that's scaled back, and you can always build, you can always layer. Eric alluded to, we're getting ready to layer on like a kind of new campaign for finance. And that's going to kind of sit on top of everything we're doing right now. They're going to actually start segmenting and breaking things out with additional content. So over time, once you build that muscle, you can make things more complicated. But I would go in the realm of thinking about how you can simplify it to get started.
So Varun, also, I will tell you that that is actually also like a question for the consulting side of our world, because to us, it comes down to leverage. What are you trying to leverage in your business? So we look at that. I look at that question. To me, it's always about money. Like, where are we trying to make money? How much money? What are those revenue streams? How are we going to try and leverage it? And how's content fit into that leverage? So for us, we're going to split off the finance. We have a separate division for the finance company. Our clients don't necessarily know or care about that because they just look at it like they work with all of us and we're all linked together. But I want to get more leverage out of that business. So it's separate. It's going to be its own focus. So it's going to be its own forward-facing company. Separate is we'll get leverage internally and we'll get leverage externally from a separate set of buyers. So therefore, it requires its own set of content campaigns. So it becomes viewed as being its own separate company. So like I said, to me, it's leverage in dollars when it comes down to that. And then it's how's content support the leverage in dollar strategy you have at the top.
All right. Thank you.
Kristen, we good?
I'm all set. Any other questions from anyone?
What are your fees, Kristen? If you
Oh, send me an email, Varun. We'll definitely talk
Terrible.
about it.
Send her an email. She'll shoot you straight. She'll give you exact answer.
Yes. I will.
I'll tell you, it's set up. You know, nothing is free or you know, and you don't want cheap. But I will tell you, for the SMB space, we keep cost in mind. So Kristen's offerings are set up to try and be cost effective. And I'll tell you, and I don't say this about much, and my clients that are here will tell you this. To some degree, I look at this as being table stakes. You have to do, to some degree, you've got to do something like this, or you do not have an ongoing presence online. And so we've tried to price it so that if it's table stakes, well, Kristen's got an offering set up so that if it's table stakes, then we got to try and make it as affordable as we possibly can. So we did that for SMBs, and so she'll go over that with you. But it's cool. Once you start to realize you have this presence and you start to grow nationally, whatever you're trying to do, then you can start playing with marketing inside of all that. So that's why I said it's an umbrella.
The really cool thing about content as well, and we've talked about this inside of the consulting company, is that, you know, we've got fewer than 10 consultants right now, but when we have 50 consultants, the same like single piece of content will serve that expanded audience. So really, it really does scale very well with your growth.
Yeah. All right, we're going to wrap. It's great to see everybody. Thank you for coming again. If you think of more content you want to see or things you want to learn or hear that we have, so we can bring some perspective on, let us know. We're grateful for all of you, whether we work with you or not. And if you have any questions about entrepreneurship or need help or want to give us tips and we can learn from you, we're always open to listen.